The squadron's ace pilot, Jake Razor Slade, just crashed and burned in the military's most advanced simulator. Every eye in the hangar then turned to the quiet woman in the corner. The one they said was just a glorified IT clerk. The silence in the airy simulation center was heavier than the Nevada heat outside. Lieutenant Jake Razor Slade, a man whose swagger was practically regulation issue, stood beside the smoking wreck of his virtual F-42 Wraith, his face a mask of disbelief. The cinnamon gum he was perpetually chewing had gone still in his jaw. 90 seconds. That's all he'd lasted. The low hum of the server racks lining the cavernous, climate-controlled hangar seemed to mock him. Screens displaying cascading lines of green code reflected in the polished concrete floor. A constant reminder that this was a war of data as much as steel. Minutes earlier, this room had been electric with bravado. Slade and his crew, the self-proclaimed best of the best, were trading kill counts from previous runs, their laughter echoing off the 6 monolithic simulators that stood like silent gods of a new age of warfare. Then one by one they failed. First Slade, then his 2 top wingmen. Each met the same fate. A storm of missile-locked tones, a desperate, useless evasion, and then digital oblivion. The confidence evaporated from the room like fuel from a ruptured line. Slade, in a fit of rage, ripped off his helmet and slammed it onto a maintenance cart. The crack of plastic on metal startling everyone. "It's a glitch," he'd yelled, his face flushed. The scenario's bugged. No one can beat that setup. His accusation hung in the air, but no one echoed it. They had all seen the telemetry. It wasn't a glitch. It was a meat grinder. And that's when their collective gaze shifted. Tucked away in a corner, sitting on a hard plastic chair near a diagnostics terminal, was Captain Eva Rostova. She hadn't said a word since she'd arrived that morning. At 30, with her light brown hair pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense ponytail and a pair of simple, frameless glasses perched on her nose, she looked more like a systems analyst than a pilot. Her flight suit, clean and devoid of any squadron patches, seemed like a costume she'd borrowed. The official reason for her presence was to assist with data integration for the new sim software. The pilot's unofficial translation, a glorified IT clerk, sent to babysit the machines. She hadn't flinched when Slade crashed. She hadn't reacted when he threw his helmet. She just sat there, posture perfect, hands resting calmly on her knees, observing. There was a stillness about her that was unnerving, an economy of motion that felt alien in a room full of restless, kinetic energy. "What's the keyboard jockey even doing here?" one of Slade's wingmen muttered, just loud enough for half the room to hear. A few snickers followed. They saw her as an outsider, a pencil pusher from a world of spreadsheets and server rooms who couldn't possibly understand the visceral, instinctual art of aerial combat. Her name, Rostova, was tacked to the bottom of the training roster, an afterthought, a clerical error nobody had bothered to correct. To them, she was invisible, a ghost in a machine, long before she ever stepped into one. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Colonel Marcus Vance strode into the control room overlooking the hangar floor, his expression as sharp and unforgiving as the crease in his uniform. He was a man who measured success in results, not excuses. His eyes, cold and gray as a winter sky, scanned the list of failed attempts glowing on the main monitor. Slade, 90 seconds. Miller, 74 seconds. Chun, 112 seconds. He tapped a finger against the polished surface of his military-issue chronograph, a relic from a past conflict he never spoke of. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick was the only sound in the room. Beside him stood Chief Master Sergeant Rex Thorne, a veteran whose face was a roadmap of a dozen deployments. Thorne was old school. He believed in grease, sweat, and the feel of a real stick in your hand. He viewed these multi-million-dollar simulators with a deep-seated skepticism. "Report," Vance said, his voice low and clipped. "It's a slaughterhouse, sir," Thorne grumbled, his disdain for the situation obvious. "The scenario is aggressive. Slade and the others say it's unwinnable." Vance's gaze fell to the last name on the list. "Rostova." He looked up from the screen, scanning the hangar below. "Who is that?" Thorne's lip curled slightly. Data integration, sir. Tech background. She's been pushing code for years. With all due respect, putting her in that sim is a waste of everyone's time. Vance's eyes found her, the quiet woman in the ill-fitting flight suit, still sitting perfectly still. He saw the dismissal in Thorne's posture, heard it in the snickers from the pilots on the floor. He was out of options. The program was behind schedule, and Washington was getting impatient. Thorne, Vance said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Get everyone on that roster through the machine. Everyone. The order, amplified over the hangar's comm system, cut through the tension. Rostova, you're up. A few pilots exchanged smirking glances. This was going to be embarrassing, but as Eva stood, the room's atmosphere began to shift. She didn't move with reluctance or bravado. She moved with a quiet, fluid purpose. Her boots made almost no sound on the concrete as she walked towards Simulator 4. As she passed the sleek, angular fuselage of the F-42 Wraith, she trailed her fingers lightly along its cold, composite skin. The junior technician, a kid named Ridge who still had the wide-eyed look of a rookie, watched her. He'd seen dozens of pilots approach the sims. They'd inspect them, pat them, some even kicked the landing gear for luck. But no one had ever touched one like that. It wasn't a gesture of inspection. It looked like she was greeting an old friend. Just try to survive the launch sequence, Captain, Thorne said, his voice dripping with condescension as she reached the access ladder. Don't play hero. Eva stopped and turned to face him. She looked directly into his eyes, her own gaze calm and unreadable behind her glasses. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and smooth, a stark contrast to the hangar's harsh acoustics. Understood, Chief. And with that, she climbed inside, not to prove them wrong, but to remind them of a truth they had long forgotten. The canopy of the F-42 hissed shut, sealing Eva inside a cocoon of flickering screens and profound silence. The world of arrogant pilots, skeptical commanders, and the faint smell of burnt coffee vanished. Here, in the heart of the machine, she was home. For a long moment, she didn't move. Her gloved hands hovered inches above the throttle and flight stick, her fingers not quite touching the controls. Outside, the pilots were making new bets. 30 seconds, Slade wagered with a smirk. I give her 30 seconds before she plows it into the first building. Eva closed her eyes. She wasn't listening to them. She was listening to the simulator. The low hum of the hydraulics, the whisper of the internal cooling fans, the faint electrical buzz from the dozens of processors working in unison. To the others, it was background noise. To her, it was a symphony, a forgotten melody playing again after years of forced silence. She was not Captain Rostova, data integration specialist. Not anymore. Inside this cockpit, she was someone else entirely. She was Nyx. One breath in, one breath out. The memories returned, not as haunting ghosts, but as lines of pristine, efficient code. The neon glow of a rain-slicked Tokyo street scene from a rooftop at 3 a.m. The Arctic chill of a server farm in Svalbard. Her breath misting as she bypassed layers of black eye security. The brief, knowing glances of teammates on covert networks, call signs, and encrypted messages flickering like digital gunfire in the dark. Faces she hadn't seen in years, now just entries in a classified, redacted file. This simulation wasn't a challenge. It was a language she had helped write. Her eyes snapped open. Her hands, which had been hovering, now moved with a speed and precision that defied logic. Instead of following the standard multi-step startup sequence displayed on the main screen, she bypassed it entirely. Her fingers danced across a secondary touchscreen keypad, inputting a string of commands so rapidly that the young technician, Ridge, watching on a diagnostic monitor, couldn't even track them. He saw the system log flash with warnings // standard _ protocol for override / accessing _ granted // What the hell is she doing? He whispered to himself. She wasn't just starting the fighter. She was waking it up, unlocking hidden parameters and dormant subroutines that only the machine's architects knew existed. The cockpit lighting shifted from a standard operational green to a cool, ethereal blue. The heads-up display, HUD, flickered, then stabilized, showing not just standard telemetry, but raw data streams, energy consumption charts, and sensor refresh rates. Outside, Colonel Vance tapped his foot impatiently. The simulation was supposed to have started a minute ago. What's the delay, Thorne? She's, familiarizing herself, sir, Thorne stammered, watching the blank main screen with growing irritation. Then the screen lit up. The simulation began. The image that resolved on the main hangar screen was breathtaking and terrifying. It wasn't a simple mountain pass. It was Hell's Kitchen, a hyper-realistic, sprawling urban wasteland of a future metropolis. Skeletal skyscrapers clawed at a bruised, digital dusk. A tangled web of collapsed highways and narrow, debris-choked streets created a three-dimensional maze of death. Eva's HUD bloomed with crimson icons. Hostile fighters, 6 of them, sweeping in from above. Multiple surface-to-air missile, SAM, sites hidden within the concrete canyons. And a constant, crackling stream of encrypted enemy chatter. This wasn't a test. It was an execution. Everyone expected her to climb, to try and meet the enemy in the open air above the city. That's what Slade had done. It was doctrine. It was also suicide. Eva did the opposite. She pushed the nose forward, plunging the F-42 Wraith directly toward the city floor. Gasps echoed through the control room. She's going to crash. Slade blurted out, a flicker of morbid satisfaction in his eyes. But she didn't crash. She leveled out just feet above a ruined expressway. The fighter's shadow flitting across the cracked pavement like a phantom. In the control room, a man in a civilian suit who had been standing quietly in the back stepped forward, his eyes glued to the screen. It was Dr. Eris Thorne, Chief Master Sergeant Thorne's younger, more cerebral brother, and the lead designer of this very scenario. She's mask flying, Eris whispered, his voice tight with a mixture of shock and disbelief. In an urban environment, the radar clutter alone. They watched in stunned silence as Eva wove the Wraith through the concrete jungle. This wasn't flying. It was a form of brutalist ballet. She threaded the fighter through the skeletal remains of office buildings and under rusted bridges, her wingtips passing mere feet from jagged rebar. The fighter, a machine built for speed and altitude, was now moving with the agility of a hummingbird. She wasn't just using the terrain to block radar. She was using the reflective glass of the skyscrapers to create false sensor readings, sending the enemy fighters chasing ghosts. Look at her energy management, Eris murmured, his professional confidence crumbling. She's flying it manually. No autopilot assist. It's impossible. Emerging from a subway tunnel into a small, open plaza, she found herself on the tail of 2 enemy fighters. They hadn't even seen her. She didn't fire a missile. Instead, a new icon flashed on her HUD, EMP. A silent, invisible pulse radiated from her aircraft. On the main screen, the 2 enemy fighters convulsed. Their icons flickered erratically as their systems shorted out. They were sitting ducks. A short, precise burst from her cannon, and the icons blinked red, then vanished. Tango 1 and 2 down. Her voice came over the speakers, calm, almost bored, as if she were reading a grocery list. The room was utterly silent. Slade's jaw was slack, the gum forgotten. She didn't celebrate. She didn't hesitate. She rolled the Wraith on its side and slipped back into the labyrinthine streets, vanishing before the other 4 fighters could even get a lock. This is not doctrine, Colonel Vance stated, his voice a low rumble of awe. No, sir, Dr. Thorne replied, his eyes wide. She's using diagnostic backdoors in the code. Exploits I put in for testing. She's not just flying the simulation. She's hacking it. In real time. He stared at the screen, at the impossible dance of the lone blue icon against the sea of red. Who is she? Eva dispatched the remaining 4 fighters with a chilling efficiency that bordered on art. She used the city's infrastructure against them, luring one into a narrow underpass where it couldn't evade, forcing another to crash while chasing her through a power station's gantries. It was a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. For minutes in, the sky was clear. The SAM sites were neutralized with precision bombs dropped from an impossible angle. The room was just starting to breathe again when Eris Thorn swallowed hard. "It's not over," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The final wave is automated. It triggers on success." As if on cue, new icons flooded the screen. This wasn't just another squadron. The central icon was larger, labeled Hive Command. 6 smaller, faster icons, designated drones, broke from it, swarming towards her position. "That's the checkmate," Slade muttered, the last of his arrogance stripped away, replaced by raw disbelief. A coordinated drone swarm. You can't outfly it, you can't outgun it. There's no way out. The Hive was the no-win condition, the final boss designed to teach even the best pilots humility. But Eva didn't turn. She didn't climb. She didn't fire. She did the unthinkable. She activated a command no one in the room had ever seen before. On Ridge's diagnostic screen, a single line of text appeared, //ghost_protocol_engaged //. On the main display, Eva's icon simply vanished. Her heat signature, her electronic emissions, her radar profile, all gone. Simultaneously, a faint, duplicate image of her fighter appeared 1,000 meters ahead, flying straight and level. The hangar went dead quiet. The only sound was the hiss of the wind over the Sim's virtual canopy. The F-42 Wraith had become a ghost. The drone swarm, slaves to their programming, surged forward, ignoring the empty space where Eva was and converging on the decoy. And in that exact moment, as the drones overshot her true position, her icon reappeared. Her turbines reignited with a scream that seemed to shake the very foundations of the hangar. She was behind them, inside their formation. It was suicide. It was genius. It was both. "Fox 3, ripple fire," she said calmly. A perfectly timed salvo of missiles erupted from the Wraith. The screen bloomed with red X's as the drones were obliterated. The Hive Command ship, its escorts gone, tried to turn to escape. Too late. A final, surgical burst from her cannon tore it in half. Then silence. The scenario ended. The screen blinked, displaying the final score. Mission score, 101%. Threats neutralized. All. Aircraft status, intact. Ammunition efficiency, 300%. A perfect score was supposed to be impossible. A score of 101% was a statistical anomaly, a ghost in the machine's own logic, triggered by her use of undocumented exploits. The canopy hissed open. Eva stepped down, her boots touching the ground with quiet finality. No heavy breathing, no triumphant smile. She calmly took off her glasses and wiped them on the sleeve of her flight suit. She looked like she had just finished a crossword puzzle. She walked past the frozen pilots, past the slack-jawed Sergeant Thorne, and headed directly for the coffee machine in the corner, her expression utterly neutral. The spell was broken only when the main hangar doors slammed open with a deafening bang. A young Air Force captain sprinted in, his face pale and his uniform slightly askew. He nearly stumbled, tried to regain his footing on the slick concrete. He scanned the room, his eyes wide with urgency. "Colonel Vance," he gasped, breathless. "Urgent line from command, sir." Vance, who had been staring, mesmerized at the 101% on the screen, turned sharply. But before he could respond, the young captain's eyes landed on Eva as she was about to pour herself coffee. His frantic search ended. The urgency on his face was replaced by something else. Pure, unadulterated reverence. He bypassed the Colonel and Chief Master Sergeant Thorne, marching directly to Eva. He snapped to perfect attention, his salute crisp and flawless. "Captain Rostova," he said, his voice now steady and formal. "The call is for you, ma'am. It's a secure line." A shockwave moved through the hangar. Pilots exchanged confused, bewildered glances. Thorne's mouth opened and closed silently. The call was for her? Eva simply nodded, as if this were a routine interruption. She placed the empty coffee pot back on its burner and walked toward the secure communications console in the control room. Vance followed, his mind reeling, operating on pure, disbelieving instinct. She picked up the red handset, reserved for the highest levels of communication, and turned slightly away. "Rostova here," she said softly. There was a pause. Then, "Yes, Mr. President." Vance's spine straightened into a rod of steel. His throat went dry. He had briefed generals, congressmen, and cabinet secretaries, but the authority implied by those 3 words made him feel like a cadet on his first day. Eva listened, her expression unchanging. "They're trying to trigger Project Chimera," she stated, not asked. Another pause. Her eyes narrowed, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, sir. I'm familiar with it. A beat. I designed its fail-safe." Vance felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Repeat. Operation Sovereign's Hand is compromised." Her voice remained steady, a surgeon's scalpel. "No, sir. They won't locate the payload. It's shielded under a quantum lock. I keyed to a ghost frequency. Their scanners won't even know it's there." She listened again, and for a fraction of a second, something flickered in her eyes. Not grief, but a deeper, older memory. "Yes, sir. Tell General Corbin." She took a quiet breath. "Tell him Nyx is active." The name detonated in Vance's mind. Not a call sign. A legend. A ghost story whispered in classified briefings. A name so redacted it barely existed. A solo operative who vanished after the Black Mesa incident, presumed killed in action. Nyx wasn't supposed to be real. "I'll be wheels down in 2 hours." Eva finished and placed the receiver back in its cradle. The soft click was deafening. When she turned, the tired analyst was gone. The woman standing before them burned with a cold, clear purpose. She looked directly at Vance. "Colonel," she said, and it was not a request. "I need priority transport to Hunter's Bluff Command. Now." Vance, who commanded a wing of the most advanced aircraft on Earth, found himself standing at attention. "Yes, ma'am." She strode toward the hangar doors without a backward glance. As she passed into the blinding Nevada sunlight, the wind caught the sleeve of her flight suit, pushing it up just enough to reveal a small, unofficial patch on her forearm that no one had seen before. A single, stylized eye, wide open in the center of a digital storm. Outside, a black pave Hawk helicopter was already descending, its blades screaming as it settled onto the tarmac. She walked into the swirling dust and vanished inside. Back in the hangar, the pilots remained frozen, haunted by the silence, the smell of jet fuel, and the impossible score still glowing on the main screen. Jake, Razor, Slade finally bent down and picked up the helmet he had thrown. He stared at the 101% that had shattered his ego. "We called her a keyboard jockey," he whispered to no one in particular. "We thought she was a nobody." He swallowed hard. Turns out, she's the one who wrote the game. Eva's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest strength often lies where we least expect it, hidden behind quiet confidence and overlooked expertise. Have you ever encountered a Nyx in your own life? Someone whose incredible talent was completely underestimated? Share your story in the comments below. Please comment with respect for everyone's experiences. And if you were captivated by this mission, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your squadron, and subscribe for more declassified legends.